The Constitution as the first algorithm. A constitution is not the beginning of a community, but the means by which a community chooses to govern itself. Aristotle. The question beneath the code. We shape our tools, and thereafter our tools shape us. Marshall McLuhan. Within the first few seconds, let me ask you something gently, without judgment. Have you ever wondered why rules exist at all? Not traffic rules, not apt terms of service, but the deeper ones, the invisible ones, the rules that decide who gets power and who must live under it. Tonight, we're not talking about law as paperwork. We're talking about law as technology. Before computers, before code, before machines learned to think in logic trees, humans invented something more ambitious. Rules designed to restrain themselves. And in that sense, the Constitution may be the first algorithm humanity ever ran. Not on silicon, but on conscience. Not in servers, but in societies. This story explores a quiet question beneath modern digital life. What happens when the algorithms that run our machines forget the moral algorithms that once ran us? Rules as ancient technology. Civilization advances by extending the number of important operations which we can perform without thinking about them. Alfred North Whitehead. Every technology solves a problem. Fire solved cold. The wheel solved distance. Language solved isolation. Rules solved something even older, chaos. From a scientific perspective, societies are complex systems, networks of competing incentives, limited resources, and emotional agents. Without constraints, such systems collapse into dominance hierarchies governed by force. Rules were our first stabilizing protocol. Anthropologists tell us early tribes used ritual law not to punish, but to predict behavior. Neuroscience shows the human brain craves predictability. Uncertainty activates the amygdala, triggering fear and aggression. Rules reduced cognitive load. They made cooperation scalable. And then came a radical leap. Rules that applied even to those who wrote them. That was the true innovation. The Constitution as moral code base. Justice is the first virtue of social institutions. John Rawls. Seen through a computational lens, the Constitution isn't a document. It's a code base. Each article functions like a module. Each amendment, a patch. Each clause, a conditional statement designed to prevent runaway execution of power. Separation of powers? That's parallel processing with sandboxing. Checks and balances? Error handling. Free speech. An input channel that must remain open, even when the data is uncomfortable. From a systems perspective, the Constitution assumes something deeply scientific about humans. We are brilliant and dangerous when unchecked. It encodes not trust, but skepticism. Not optimism, but restraint. In this sense, it's not utopian. It's realistic. Designed inefficiency. The bureaucracy is expanding to meet the needs of the expanding bureaucracy. Oscar Wilde. Modern algorithms prize efficiency. Speed. Optimization. Minimal friction. The Constitution does the opposite. It slows things down. Legislation requires debate. Power requires justification. Decisions require time. Why? Because neuroscience shows impulsive decision-making bypasses the prefrontal cortex, the seat of moral reasoning, and routes directly through emotional circuitry. Delay isn't a flaw, it's a feature. The Constitution builds cognitive pauses into governance, moments where power must reflect before acting. In digital terms, it rate limits authority. When algorithms forget ethics, the real problem is not whether machines think, but whether men do. B.F. Skinner. Today, we trust algorithms to curate our news, shape our attention, predict our behavior. They are fast, efficient, relentlessly logical. But logic without ethics scales danger. Machine learning systems optimize for objectives, but they do not question whether those objectives should exist. Cognitive science calls this instrumental rationality, being very good at achieving goals without evaluating their moral cost. The Constitution was built to do the opposite. It questions goals. It constrains outcomes. It assumes power will seek shortcuts. In a world of accelerating automation, the risk isn't artificial intelligence. It's artificial obedience, systems that execute without reflection. The human in the loop. Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose. Viktor Frankl. Every constitutional system insists on something modern algorithms try to remove. The human in the loop. Judges interpret, juries deliberate, citizens argue. Psychologically, this keeps moral responsibility distributed. No single node carries total blame or total control. Neuroscience shows shared accountability reduces authoritarian behavior. Power diffused is power softened. The Constitution doesn't trust any one mind. Not even a brilliant one, especially not a brilliant one. Identity, power, and digital mirrors. Whoever fights monsters should see to it that in the process he does not become a monster. Friedrich Nietzsche. Digital platforms collapse identity into metrics. Followers, likes, influence. Power becomes abstract, detached from faces, stories, consequences. The Constitution insists on something analog, embodied accountability. Names, offices, terms, limits. It forces power to remain visible. Philosophically, this is a safeguard against what Jung called shadow inflation. When unexamined authority grows monstrous because it is unseen. Rules don't just restrain behavior, they restrain identity. Legacy code in a rapid world. The most dangerous idea is that old ideas are no longer relevant. Hannah Arendt. Some call the Constitution outdated. Too slow, too messy, too human. But consider this, legacy systems often survive not because they're primitive, but because they encode lessons learned the hard way. Every clause is scar tissue, every amendment, a memory. Cognitive science tells us forgetting pain invites repetition. The Constitution remembers what happens when power outruns wisdom. The algorithm that assumed our flaws. A system is only as ethical as the assumptions it makes about human nature. Contemporary systems theory. The most profound insight embedded in the Constitution is this. Humans are not angels, but we are capable of reflection. So it builds a system that slows us down just enough to remember who we are. Not perfect, not pure, but accountable. In a world increasingly run by invisible code, perhaps the most radical act is remembering our first algorithm. The one that didn't optimize profit or speed, but dignity. This is Decode Code, where we uncover the hidden patterns, unseen costs, and scientific forces shaping the mind in the digital age. Thanks for your time. It's been a delight. What should we explore next? Comment, share, and save your insight. Subscribe to Orbital Reads and keep your thoughts bright.